Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
7:07 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman on the line, and we are pleased to have her. Ann Coulter, author of the new book, Mugged, Racial Demagoguery from the 70s to Obama, came out this week. By the way, WMAL is sponsoring a book party with Human Events and Americans for Tax Reform. But it's October 5th, that's Friday, 4 to 6. But you need to RSVP if you want to get in. You have to email bookparty@atr.org. We'll give you that again. You can write it down. But Ann, how are you?
Fine, thank you. That's going to be my first book signing.
Really? That's awesome.
Cool.
Well, that's excellent. Now, look, when you start talking about issues of race and politics, it's delicate stuff. And
nothing's delicate with Ann.
But you're not particularly known for your delicacy in taking on these tough topics. Tell me, what is the premise of the book?
Well, although race is in the title, not to make it sound less interesting, I think it's more interesting. It's not really about black people. It's about white liberals and how they have been such a disaster for race relations, starting with their defense of slavery, their defense of civil rights. They've completely inverted the history of civil rights in this country. Then, they cared about black people, or pretended to, for about 5 minutes, and then suddenly started describing civil rights as all the things they really care about, like abortion and the homeless and gay marriage. And meanwhile, probably out of guilt through the really awful history of the Democrats on civil rights, for about 20 years, longer than that, really. Certainly the golden age was 70s and 80s. That's why I say from the 70s. They just drove everyone crazy with their apocryphal racial incidents all the time, particularly in places that had no legacy of Jim Crow, but did have a lot of white liberal journalists, like New York City and Washington, D.C., and all hate crimes were believed instantly it was Trayvon Martin. And the Duke LaCrosse case, every single day, cops were constantly being accused of police brutality. And when the truth would slowly emerge, and you found out that, actually the cop was being mugged after all, the conclusion to the story would never be announced with the fanfare of the original accusations. I think that all of that changed, ironically enough. This is sort of the arc of the book with the O.J. verdict. And at that one moment, the white guilt bank shut down, and it was the healthiest thing that ever happened to America, because people could talk, even liberals started treating blacks like adults at that point. You could say that an obviously guilty black criminal was guilty, and suddenly you had this flowering of all this black talent on TV and universities, and it turned out that Jesse Jackson wasn't the only spokesman for black America. And the conclusion is that the candidacy of Obama brought it all back by giving liberals an opportunity to mau-mau white people and get the most liberal president we've ever seen elected at the same time. And oh boy, are they back to their old tricks now, as I suspected they would be, because they can't defend Obama on his record.
Right.
So what can they do?
But having said all that, there is a racial divide when it comes to politics with blacks and Hispanics. But we'll focus on blacks. I mean, the number was astonishing. Over 95%.
95%
voted for President Obama. Now you can say, well, he was the first black on the actual ballot. But even before then, the number still. So why is it that Republicans can't get the black vote?
Well, it drives me crazy because, as you two probably know, but a lot of people certainly don't, blacks were all originally Republicans. The first black sent to Congress, all Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
The first black governor, Republican. The Republican Party is the natural home of black people, and the true history of civil rights would tick me off if I were a black America, at least at the Democrats, or especially at the Democrats. But the Democrats have done a very good job rewriting history, and this isn't a new thing for them. It's a staple of Democratic campaigning to call Republicans racist. So they've spent 40 years telling black people Republicans hate you. One interesting fact is I believe it is the case that in the House of Representatives, every black member of the House is elected from one of these gerrymandered, heavily black districts. The Republican black members of Congress, no, they're generally elected from majority white areas. So apparently Republicans are more willing to vote for a black than Democrats are in those cases. But you know, I also don't understand why Jewish voters go for the Democrats.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't vote their interests.
Well, today it seems that race is very much not only race, but it's class warfare, which many people say is a way to talk about race without talking about race.
Yes. Whereas, no, you're exactly right. When a Republican talks about poor people, we think poor people. When a Democrat hears or talks about poor people, he thinks black. Same thing with, you know,
food stamps.
Yeah. And what was in the post-O.J. Paradise I just mentioned, two of the greatest periods of advancement for black people, same period, the post-O.J. Paradise, was in New York City under Rudy Giuliani by pursuing the same law and order policies that we had been told were a secret code for racism all those years. Then he implements them, and Bill Clinton claims credit for the drop in crime rate. Well, the whole time Giuliani was doing it, Bill Clinton's Justice Department, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton themselves, Eliot Spitzer as Attorney General of New York, were busily investigating Giuliani, screaming bloody murder about him and his police being a racist, and it saves tens of thousands of black lives by those policies being continued and then imitated in other cities. And the other one was, of course, welfare reform, which, again, for decades, that was called a secret Republican code word for racism because we hate black people. It finally gets implemented with Bill Clinton kicking and screaming. It's such a huge success that, again, Bill Clinton claims credit for it. Mm-hmm.
Very quickly, because our time's running down, the polls seem to be slipping a little bit for Mitt Romney. What do you think about those polls that you see?
I know it sounds sort of simple-minded and cheerleaderish, but I just don't believe them. I think the larger fact is Obama, the incumbent president, can't break 50%. The economy's in the toilet. We have 23 million unemployed. I don't know if it is, as some people say, I'm not a poll reader, that they're being weighted unevenly, if we're getting some of the Bradley effect where people don't want to tell pollsters. For one thing, because...
But you just don't buy it.
I still think Romney's going to win.
All right. Ann Coulter, the author of the new book, Mugged, Racial Demagoguery from the 70s to Obama. And I again mentioned WMAL sponsoring a book party with Human Events and Americans for Tax Reform. It's Friday, October 5th from 4 to 6, but you need to RSVP. And the way you go about that, write this down, bookparty@atr.org.
Yeah, we'll put that on our website. Ann, great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Great to talk to you. Thanks.